I'm going to drop this video on my podcast called Welcome to the Blackening. And I started this a couple of months ago thinking I'd do something based on what was happening with the Democratic Party and the primaries that were happening with Bernie Sanders and when it came down to Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden, to show how it harkens back to what's happened to this country overall when power doesn't allow for a different narrative, someone else to control the outcomes. Power is going to maintain power until power is taken away from power. And since the beginning of this country, when the riots happened, they call it a Boston Tea Party. It was a riot when people could no longer put up with being put upon by someone else who had more power than they did. They finally banded together and overthrew the power that was. Then they created a nation. Remember, they created a nation that they didn't own, on land that they didn't own, that was not theirs. They created a nation of white men and then said, let us do this for ourselves, make it a great experiment. So rich white men, well, some of them were rich, decided we're going to take land that doesn't belong to us at the end of a barrel, and if you don't give it to us, we'll kill you, and we'll kill you even if you do give it to us. So the country was built on a genocidal process, and then it was built by people who were stolen from another land, and they didn't care how many they had to kill to make it happen. The estimates are up to 10 million people, possibly 100 million, between 10 million and 100 million people died in the Middle Passage, from Africa to North and South America. But I'm speaking directly about America here, the type of behaviors of rich white men who decided we don't like what's being done to us somewhere else, and we're leaving, and we're going to start something somewhere else. And we're going to write a piece of paper to make sure that whatever happens here, we maintain power. And we're going to set up a government that at the end of the day, no matter what happens, we can always shift it so that we maintain power. When you look at the way that piece of paper, that as far as I'm concerned is toilet paper, might as well wipe our behinds with it, because it means absolutely nothing, because it is only designed to keep the powerless powerless. When you see how it's designed, when you realize that the presidency and it has the power to do things like clemency, to pardon people, to pardon people that have done horrendous crimes. It just happened recently. Who wrote that? We know who wrote it, but who wrote that? Who said, hey, by the way, the guy that's in charge, once we get him there, if we commit a crime, he can let us go. Let's write that down. Let's write that in. It's amazing to me that we've been played the way we've been played. And the funnier part is how the religious community got played into this. When they saw that they could use religion to do what they wanted to do, they were running from religious persecution. And let's make sure we don't write that in unless we absolutely need it. And then they needed it and they used it. Oh, we can keep people in line with religion? Oh, let's do that one too. And by the way, let's make sure they know that God will get them if they don't behave, if they get out of line, that they should do things like turn the other cheek and be good slaves to their master. Write that down. And oh, by the way, make sure the slaves know about that. Don't let them read. Don't let them educate themselves. But make sure they know about that. Never allow them to read the Constitution that we wrote that says all men are created. Oh, by the way, they're not men. Don't let them read the part where they're only they're 3/5 of a human being, and they wrote that in. that you snatched my humanity from the very beginning. And then I have to continually, daily, every day, earn my humanity. And the reason I'm naming the podcast, Welcome to the Blackening, because every once in a while, white people are given the black treatment. In fact, the reason I'm naming this the Blackening is because Donald Trump has exposed America, what you are, what you do, how it's done. He's exposed it to everyone. And the problem with it is middle class, comfortable, white America is highly upset and indignant. How dare he steal from the Treasury? How dare he transfer trillions of dollars of wealth from the poor to the overprivileged to overmoneyed? How dare he do that? How dare he steal money and put it in his own pocket? And I go back and look and say, well, how many politicians go in broke as church mice and come out rich as robber barons? We live in a country that tells us that we can live the great American dream, and then tells us to not think critically about what that means. I'm so tired of the uncritical thinking masses. I'm tired of us buying the hype and the propaganda that what's happening in America has been a nightmare for damn near everybody that's not in the 1%. Everybody's nightmares are not the same. We're experiencing a pandemic, which is nightmarish for most people. So it's not the same. I've heard people say we're all in the same boat. No, we're not. Some of us ain't got a boat. The tidal wave's coming. Some of you will survive because you got a boat. Some of us are watching the wave come and know we're going to get washed away. Some of you fooled yourselves into thinking because you allowed a black president who knew his place to ascend to the highest office in the land and did absolutely nothing when he got there, other than protect the interest of white rich men to expand imperialism. He did absolutely nothing to help the masses, and he held no one in accountability. So if you assuage your white guilt with a black president, shame on you. And then you got upset because a buffoon was allowed to ascend to the highest. That was the mediocre white man conversation. A total buffoon. A racist, worthless, unaccomplished, not even mediocre buffoon was allowed to ascend to the highest level, and he got there and he's told you since the beginning how worthless he was. And you upset because he got there. You put on pink pussy hats the day he got in office. I said, wait a minute, hold on a second. How is it that you're upset with him? He just got there. But you're not upset about my circumstances. That was 4 years ago I said this, when he first got in office. Here we are talking about how bad the situation is for black people in America. And I've heard the conversation about we got to get Trump out. And you've given me the option of Donald Trump, a racist, xenophobic, worthless individual at a whole nother level, or a man with a history of doing things to black people, saying things and carrying through that you don't even count. He protected credit card companies that were predatory. You had no problem with that because, hey, if you don't need a credit card, don't use it. Okay, well, guess what you did to me? Predatory lending. But let's go farther than that. The one that really that is selling to everyone right now. What about SCOTUS? I mean, the Supreme Court, he's got... Well, let's talk about that for a second. Didn't he sit on the Judiciary Committee and chair it when he questioned a black woman about a worthless black man who had a history of treating black people badly? And he shut her down, didn't listen to her voice, made sure she had no backup, and then supported a black man who's one of the biggest buffoons that's ever sat on the Supreme Court and is racist as hell. And our problem is thinking because he has black skin, he's about us. He's just the opposite. When someone says they're a constitutionalist, what they're saying is we're about going back to exactly what the slave owners wrote in the first place. We want to make sure that we go back to what the original intent was, which was to enslave black people, to make sure that women had little rights or no rights, that those who were indigenous to this area when white men got here were not counted. That's what a constitutionalist says. He supported both Anthony Scalia and Clarence Thomas. And the problem we have is thinking that those people that we support to be president are going to step up and put someone on the far left. When did that ever happen? On the far, someone who's a progressive leftist SCOTUS individual? When did that ever happen? So, in the blackening of America, there are those of you who fail to understand how you've been getting played in this process too. Martin tried to tell a jailer, you closer to me than you are to the people who look like you, who hired you. Your circumstances ain't no better than me. And don't get it twisted. I'm not a Martin supporter or fan. Don't get it twisted. For all the different reasons that I will bring forth on this podcast. On the blackening. Of us being given the misleadership. Of the false narrative of how things are done or what was done going forward. And it speaks to what's happening right now. Recently, a black misleadership individual stepped forth in South Carolina to a failing, dead in the water, no-moneyed politician. And on his word, supposedly on his word alone, Joe Biden is now the presumptive nominee for the Democrats. On his word, on that one black man's word, he turned everything around. When did a black man ever have that kind of power in America? When did that ever happen? Are we all buffoons and stupid on this one? Have you all lost your goddamn minds? Oh, and by the way, I will goddamn some stuff. On this podcast, I'll be goddamned a lot. Because that God thing, I've asked the question, I can't get no answers. I'm on tangential because I'm going to say some things and go, let's riff on that for a second. I asked the question today based on how many people are praying right now while people are dying in the streets, while black men are having their lives taken from them by the power, when black women, Native Americans, Chicanos, people I care about, are having their lives taken by not only law enforcement, but the very systems that have allowed for all of the atrocities we suffer. Not just at the hand of a cop or his bullet, but the illnesses we suffer, And then you step out here and tell me we're going to pray on it. Let's get prayerful. I asked the question, and I ask again. Does God hate black people? Or is there a God? Because if you step out here and tell me that you prayed on it, did it bring somebody back? Did he get some justice? Because the justice to me would be he raised them from the dead. Because if you killed my son and I prayed on it, he must be coming back. Because that's the only justice there is. But if you prayed on it so you would feel better, you're going to feel better. You ain't going to never get better. You ain't never going to get well from it. But you may get better. You may assuage that pain. But if you're using God as the excuse for what's being done to us, we're going to have a problem. Step out here on this one. I'll be 64 years old next month. I got a whooping in Columbus, Ohio. I got a paddling from drinking from a white-only water fountain. God didn't save me from getting that whooping. I was in the military as a staff sergeant. The year I decided I've had enough, I got out. Because I realized something that all of us should realize as people of color. What the hell? Did I not hear Muhammad Ali said, ain't nobody over there did nothing to me? But my options were limited when I decided that school wasn't what I wanted to do. And since I didn't have a choice at that time, and I didn't want to get a McJob, I went in the military. I did 10 years. And I was a staff sergeant in the military when I was pulled out of a nightclub that I was doing research for, my own nightclub, that I wanted to build for myself, own for myself. And I was trying to see who was in the place, how lights were done, what kind of things I wanted to do different. And I was pulled out of the club, thrown on the ground, and had a knee on my head. Luckily, it was on my head and not my throat. And the whole time I'm sitting there getting my brains crushed into the ground, I'm hearing a cop telling me, shut up, nigga. So when someone says they okay with nigga around me, we gonna have an issue. We gonna have a problem. And the sad part was, the even sadder part was, as I'm having my brain crushed out, boys run out the club that was with me. And he helped me. But they did scream at the cops, what you doing to my nigga? Let my nigga go. Etc., etc., niggera. So what's happening in America right now goes directly to that issue. I'm going to go back to what's happening right now because there are riots involved with the protest, and that's a good thing. In fact, if it's just a protest, you ain't getting jack. You can forget that. America's ready for protest. They good with you protest. They good for you marching in the street, coming in mass, 10,000 of you at the Capitol. They don't give a damn about that. Oh no, because 10,000 people even voting ain't gonna change shit. They don't give a damn about you protesting. But you burn up some shit, you turn over some shit, you come at them like they come at you, you disrupt commerce. The history of things says, oh, don't mess with commerce. That's America. We can't have that. And here's the game that's going to get played this time, because they've already started the narrative. It's only a few people who are violent. And they're not really from the place that it is. That's being shipped in from somewhere else. Y'all really ain't that angry. See, that anger's coming from somewhere else. It's being created by someone else. The fact that you stole an election from Bernie Sanders, and guess what? Bernie Sanders was your last resort. Hey, bruh, He wasn't even my first pick. But he was the best we was going to get because I'm okay with socialism. Because I have an issue with some of his stances about some overseas stuff. But I thought maybe he could learn because he's been learning all his life. I've listened to him since the 90s. I've watched him. But you stole the election from him on the word of a black man. That didn't happen, by the way. Just as the things that we've been looking at historically in America didn't happen. And I really want to talk about this, is the how the media is not controlled by us, controlled by rich white men, and a lot of them are Southerners, have a Southern mentality, a Southern bent. And I say that because I'm watching Grant the other day, and my wife is like, yeah, I'm a Grant fan. That boy was bad. Why didn't I know this? I said, because it ain't in the history books that way. When someone tells me history is written by the victor, then we lost to the South. Because the history is written in a way that makes the South look like they were victims. That Grant, probably the greatest president we ever had, because all the rest of them had some issues, all of them, was vilified as a drunk and a loser and a useless individual and all that. And so you turn around and say, hey, bro, man, he released a slave when he was broke and could have kept him because that was fundage back in the day. That's standing up. That's John Brown kind of stuff. But I say that because the narrative right now is these riots are not organic. As if you haven't been killing me with the pandemic, with economic depravity, of financial, health care, transportation, policing. You haven't been killing me with all these things around the entire country when you look at the numbers. But what's happening right now is not organic. We ain't supposed to be mad. Only a few people are really mad. That's why you had 40 different cities on flame like last night. I am so proud right now. And I don't care if it was white people doing it or not. I don't give a damn who did it. I'm proud of you. Because enough is enough. We have been fooled, bamboozled, cajoled, moved around and played games on with the black misleadership class in America because that's who we've been given to vote for. We fail to understand that even the black people that they put up in front of us now are still the comfortable Negroes. And I say put up in front of us because they say, well, we voted for them. No, we didn't. No, you didn't. You voted for the people they told you to vote for because that's all you were given. Just as you're being given to Joe Biden now. You can't vote third party. That's a throwaway vote. Nope. A throwaway vote is a vote I didn't vote. And I can do that too. Because I don't like none of you. How about that? So the black people who are out here saying enough is enough, and the white people who said enough is enough, and the Chicano community that said enough is enough, and the Navajo nation that's dying at a higher rate than everybody else is saying enough is enough, and the Native American and Indian and everybody else that's not a rich white man has said enough is enough, and now America can experience the blackening. The blackening means you can suffer like I have suffered historically. And even at that, you ain't going to get as bad as I'm going to get because I'm not where you are. When the shit rolls downhill, I'm at the bottom of the hill. I have had arguments. I've had crying in my own household this week. And I was told you can't sell, you can't say kill the cops. I said, I didn't say kill the cops, although one of my brothers did say, and he was doing one. I said, nope, I rephrased it. But what I said was, if law enforcement continues to enforce law, as in kill me, with impunity, and there's no retribution, and I do mean real retribution, then eventually those of us who are damaged and ain't coming back will take the law into our hands. And just as you're afraid of a terrorist with a dirty bomb from overseas, I've been trained. I know how to make a whole lot of stuff that's damaging. I know how to hurt people in all kinds of ways. And if something were to happen to one of my family members, I'm not, you can't interview me because you can't find me. I'm going off grid. And I'm going to do you just like you've done my family. You all look alike. And it's straight up terrorism. And I would terrorize everybody that look like the people who hurt my son, my daughters, my mother, my father, whomever in my family. I'm going to terrorize you now. And you will feel pain like you never dreamed of. I said I'd burn a house down with somebody inside of it. You don't understand. I'd blow up buildings. I don't give a damn. Because I need to assuage my pain. And the only way I can assuage my pain, if you took away somebody I cared about, loved, and you killed them, is to make sure you never reproduced. That's the blackening. You see, Ahmaud Arbery will never reproduce. I go down a list in my head. George Floyd will never reproduce again. He has a daughter who has a daughter. He never got to meet her. But I go down in my head of the people who have died just recently. There's a collage of them. There were children on that list. There's a 7-year-old girl, a 12-year-old boy. They got to live no life. And if you have no compunction about taking away the life of someone else, you don't deserve to live, and you definitely don't deserve to reproduce someone like you. And that is the blackening. I'll be doing this because I'm going to call out a whole lot of folks on this nonsense going forth. I'm going to call out systems and people and names, and a whole lot of those people y'all like, you've enjoyed. They were your heroes. We're going to investigate that nonsense. We're going to talk about why they're your heroes, why they were put in front of you in the first place, and the hypocrisy of it all, the propagandizing of them all, the mythicizing of them all. The fact that people are quoting Martin Luther King now. I mean, they went back and looked up his quotes. Nevertheless, you're looking at the last things he said when he realized he'd made some major errors. Never asking real questions as to why Martin had guns. Why a man of God had guns. If he thought God was going to protect him, why you need a gun? That's example number one. We're going to get into that. We're going to get into a whole lot of that going forward. Because I think it's necessary for us to start tearing down this nonsense, this narrative. Especially, and I hope white people will grab hold of this and go, damn, he's angry. He's really... Yes. And the fact that you're not where my anger is my issue at the end of the day. Because if you say you're my ally, but you can't meet my anger, then it's going to be difficult for you to be my ally. I'm talking about some John Brown kind of action. Because I've had to sacrifice all along just to get here. In America, it's hard being a black man. I saw a gentleman last night who cried on television. He cried, a black man, an accomplished black man. who'd overcome all the obstacles to accomplish a great deal, I suppose. He's on television. But he cried because he said it hurts. I'm done crying. Welcome to the Blackening.